This week on Intrigued, full effect.
For so long, and I love her so much. And we've missed a whole lifetime of memories, and at least we could maybe get some more memories while we can.
I'm Chandrea Thomas, and welcome to episode 22. In this podcast, I talk about curious cases, disappearances, and other stuff. And today I'm talking about the curious case and disappearance of 20-year-old Elizabeth Palmer from Salem, Virginia. This is the oldest case that I've covered so far in my podcast. It dates all the way back to 1974. The family has been waiting for answers for over 45 years, and they believe that Elizabeth may have been pulled into a cult, possibly Children of God or Jonestown. The family was also recently able to finally get an official police report filed with the Virginia State Police on the case. I spoke to 6 different family members via Skype, and that's also a first. There were a lot of people on that call. I was also intrigued by the mystery of it all, including her travel to Mexico and her desire to go to South Africa to be a missionary. I spoke to Elizabeth's sister Martha, her nieces Tracy, Christy, and Sarah, and cousins Mandy and Pam. This is what happened.
So tell me, as far as Elizabeth goes, who was the last person to see her and what happened?
That would be me. She asked for me to take her to the airport to get on the plane that morning, me and my 2 friends. So, and she did explain that she wanted me to take her because I was still a teenager and I didn't really look that much at the tickets and information on the tickets and things like that. And she knew my dad would have. So I would be the last person that saw her.
So what happened that day? I mean, so she had been home for a trip for a short period of time and then she decided to leave. What did you know about where she came from and anything about where she was going?
Well, she had came home from being in Mexico for about 2 months approximately. And we knew at the time that she was here to get things in order to go over to supposedly South Africa. And so we knew that she would be leaving, but with all the assumption that she would be coming home as well. So when I told my sister goodbye that morning, I had no idea that I wouldn't see her again.
So at that time, was she in any particular type of mood? What was her demeanor? The same as usual?
Same as usual, but she was a little, she teared up. We were a close family. We didn't, I don't know if she teared up because maybe she knew more. Of course, she knew more than I did. Maybe she knew she wouldn't be coming home as quick as what we thought she was supposed to. So she did tear up before she got on the plane. That was a definite. But other than that, she was in a good mood.
What date was this that you last saw her? What was the last contact that you guys had with her?
It was July 25th.
A couple of years later, you guys did receive a letter from her. Do you know where it came from? What was the contents of that letter? I read some of the stuff, but I'm curious what you guys get from that.
Yeah, that was the one postmarked from Yonkers. I believe she said that she had gotten some friends who was leaving where they were, and they were going to mail it for her in Yonkers. So that's why it had a Yonkers postmark on it.
And what was she talking about in this letter?
She was talking about she would be home. She was doing okay. Was that the one where she was studying? And she had finally found a purpose. What her purpose was, she was going to this university, and she was laying the foundation. She wanted to study either science or chemical imbalances. The one before that was about she would be coming home. She was going to make sure mom and dad she was going to build them a comfortable home.
What has it been like for you and your family? I mean, it's been 45 years of you guys plus, right? Of you guys not knowing where she is. What has that been like for you?
Honestly, in the beginning, it was horrible. I saw my mom and dad cry almost every single day, of course. And I saw my dad sit at the kitchen table writing letters to everybody that he thought to possibly write letters to to policemen, to senators, to everybody that's in that album. And he did that on a consistent basis. And my mom would sit and cry almost every day. And almost every day, he would start getting these responses back in. Of course, all of them were, we've looked and we do not have any records of her being in the state. He sent to visas, to passports, to police departments, to Children of God, as you can tell from the information that we sent you, you could tell he was desperate to find her. He was so desperate to find her, and I think you can see that in the letters he wrote to his mother, which would have been my grandma as well. He was. That's all he focused on after she left.
I understand that he's in his 90s now, early 90s, somewhere in there. To this day, how has he been handling it? I imagine it's got to be very difficult.
We still live in the same house that we grew up in, so we're sitting in it right now. Yeah, we're still sitting here in the room we slept in, so it's still every day. And she was such a good sister. We weren't a family that was dysfunctional. Everybody has a dysfunctional family, but we loved each other. And it killed us when she left. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's really clear that, no matter how much time goes by, the pain is still there.
Yeah, it is. We loved her dearly.
And, I am curious, too, when it comes to the idea of how to search and where to search. How hard was that for you guys? Because it's not like she disappeared in your town. You can go search for her in your town. Yeah. So that had to be pretty difficult, too.
It was very difficult. And like I said, my dad reached out to everyone he knew, because that was before any media. And he just wrote letters. And he just wrote letters and wrote letters. And we contacted... Also, I contacted Dr. Phil and the locator, and I don't know how many other shows back in the day, intermittently, and just sent information asking if they would be interested. So, unfortunately, I didn't get a response, or I got a response, but it was like, no, you don't have enough to go on. And then you let it go for a few years, and then something comes up and it triggers it again, and you want to start again. And that's when the locator happened. I saw him on TV when he had that series. It's like, okay, maybe he can find her. And then someone suggested a Facebook page, which is where Pam came into it. And bless her heart, she created that. And it's been rolling on ever since that, with the help of Christy and Sarah and Tracy and everybody. It's amazing. It's like it's been divine. It's like everything happens for a reason, and maybe this is the time before anything happens to my dad that he can get some closure.
What about her friends, her circle of people? She was 20 years old, so she had to have some sort of friend, boyfriend. Like what was going on there, and what did those people say?
Yeah, they had a group of friends. She was very athletic in school. She was the president of the GAA. She played basketball. She played tennis. She played volleyball. And of course, with that, you have that circle of friends as well. She had a lot of friends. And as far as her dating, I just remember one guy that came here. But again, I just remember her going out, and it's like, that's odd. Elizabeth's going out on a date. So that was odd. I didn't remember his name or anything.
And what about her car? I was reading stuff about her car. Did she give it to someone? Who ended up with the car? Where's the car?
It's it's our understanding. We don't have any proof of this, but we do through my Aunt Gladys, her daughter Kathy, which is a cousin of mine. She does remember Elizabeth bringing her car up and she asked my Aunt Gladys if she could put the car in the backyard and that someone would be coming to pick it up within the next few days. But she didn't tell us anything about that. We didn't find that out until years later.
Someone actually did come and pick the car up then?
Yeah, I remember Gladys, she said, this was before she passed away. She finally said something about it, and she said She got up one morning, the next morning, could have been 2 days later, but the car was just gone. Checked with the DMV as well. We had the VIN number and everything because the car was in his name. So we're not quite sure how someone else bought it without his signature or how she even got it back here.
And that's the curious question, too, because as I was going through the papers and stuff last night, she was sending money. Where was it coming from?
One letter where she's talking, she was getting some money from teaching English to kids in universities in Mexico. That's the only mention of anything. I know that she got any money from. So it's a good question, something that needs a little bit more.
Yeah, examination. At what point did you guys realize that something was wrong, that you had completely lost contact with her?
Elizabeth went to Mexico in September of 1971, and she met some people who introduced her to a larger group in Mexico, and they seemed to be stationed around Monterrey, Nuevo León, Mexico, and that was where she said she was working for about 2 months, basically teaching English to college students.
Yeah.
And within 2 months, she decided that she was going to travel with this group, but she sent a letter back to her family saying that she was going to cut contact and become a missionary in South Africa. And that was when her father started contacting everybody that he could think of, because that's a major red flag that somebody is abusive or that a group is a cult when they tell you to cut contact with your family. And so that aroused a lot of suspicion. There was another letter that came after that. She was back in the States and still trying to go overseas, and that was postmarked in New Orleans. And she said she was getting ready to leave the country. And about that time, the FBI, had been looking for Elizabeth, and she had called back home after that letter that she was cutting contact and changed her mind about it. So the group that she was with hit the roof when they found out that the FBI was looking for her. So the impression is there that this group was coercing her to cut contact with her family.
And no one ever knew the name of this particular group?
No.
No.
Wow, she kept that secret. Wow. When I was talking to Tracy, she had mentioned that there was a young man from the same town that you guys are from who had also gone missing, and the family went to go rescue him or something like that. Did you guys, who can speak to that?
I believe he was around the same age as Elizabeth, within a couple years. But we do know for a fact that he did leave around the same time as her. I think maybe within a couple years later, and he did go over to the Mexico area, and he was involved in a cult. We do not know the name of that cult. We have not been able to find it out. We've talked to a few of his family members that have given us a little bit of information. They have said that he was gone for quite some time, and that when he did return home, his parents had relocated to Florida. So he got back in touch with his brother, and his brother had to help him kind of transition back from being in a cult, being away for so long, and getting back used to being here in a normal environment, I guess you could say. And he had some problems going to the DMV, trying to straighten out things with his social security number and all of that. So we do know that that took place, and that is from the same town that Elizabeth lived in, Salem, Virginia. That's where he lived at, and I believe that he lives in the area now. But we have tried to, get into contact with him to get additional information. But we just know that he was involved in a cult and left around the same time that she did, and he was in Mexico as well. We do not know if they were together or if they were in the same group. We believe he left around 73. So yes, he was missing and gone around this, from 73 on. I believe he was gone for about 20 years, and then he came home.
Wow, 20 years. Wow.
And his parents had already moved, and I don't think he was aware. They moved to Florida.
And he was, 18, 19 at the time?
18.
18. Okay, so you guys are trying to track this guy down at this point. That's one of your latest leads as far as trying to get information.
Yes.
Now, here's a question, and tell me who can speak to this. But the idea of a Jonestown connection or anything like that, is that something that you guys believe is a possibility, given the time frame, given where she was, and the situation, and that she's never, reemerged anywhere?
I've kind of looked into that and gotten a list of names, and there are some unidentified people, but their pictures are up on the website also. So I've looked through all of that and been through all the documentations I can find, and I really don't think she was in with that group, but I could be wrong because they've listed all the names that went with him in Guyana.
Okay, and as far as like DNA and things like that, there could be some testing with the remains that are left at this point, right?
Yeah.
Are you guys going to check into that just to make sure?
Yes.
Okay, where are you guys in that process, or have you started yet?
I sent the ancestry off last week, and I believe my dad did as well.
We do have a couple family members that are in one of the ancestry sites where you can match, family members. We have taken additional samples from family members for that, but the agent that we have involved in the case, Agent Scott with the Virginia State Police, he is going to be, as part of his investigation, he will be getting samples from her father and from Martha, her sister, to actually have tested through the crime lab so that we can test the CODIS database, which, has a lot more information and a lot more there to verify it against.
Here lately, we've kind of been looking at a lot of the Children of God because it seemed to be in the same kind of area that she was in, and they had lots of different places worldwide where they had these communes set up. And so some of it seemed to be fitting her situation, but we still don't know. That's something that we're kind of looking into. We've been watching a lot of documentaries about it and reading up a lot about it. But that's one of the areas that we've kind of been checking into lately, because that seemed to be a group in which people are still in it right now. It's just a different name, but it seemed to be something where when we were watching one of the documentaries, one of the 20-year-old boys was talking to his mother in Mexico City, and his family's still in the group. So, I mean, that's something that's come to our attention now. We didn't realize how prevalent it still is this day and time for some of these cults.
Yeah, that's kind of wild to even think. It seemed like that was something that was happening in the 70s, and it just kind of in the early 80s, and it kind of went away. But it seems to be, but they still exist to this day. That's pretty wild to think about.
Exactly.
And her father, Michael Randy, he obviously thought the Children of God too, because he sent 2 different letters to them, one in Texas and one in California.
What's interesting to me is that she communicated with the family, it seems like pretty regularly. So for her to completely shut off all communication for this period of time, I mean, do you guys feel that she is alive somewhere, or do you feel that someone has that she's gone?
I kind of feel like she's gone, but then there's always that hope, that she isn't. And I think this is kind of like our last ditch effort, and I think that's why everything's just fallen into place here. I would give my life to know that she's here and she's with us, but I cannot imagine her not having any contact with her family. I mean, I can understand getting into a group when you're young and you get brainwashed, and she was the type, she wanted to have a purpose and she wanted to save the world, and that's what she was doing. But to not ever contact us, and at one point I wrote to Salvation Army a couple times, and under their advisement was to write a letter, and they weren't in the area of finding missing people, but they would forward this letter to her, but they wouldn't let me know anything. They said the way I would know is if I got this letter back, that it meant that it didn't have anywhere to go. I did that 2 times within a period of a few years each. I never got either one of those letters back. And the purpose of one of those letters was to let my sister know that my mom was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. So to give her kind of a heads up, look, if you ever came home, it's time for you to come home now. And, it was a very passionate letter and, please come home, be with us. And I never got that letter back either.
The letters that she sent from Mexico, where she was sending from, was there a return address on those envelopes? Because I don't think I saw one.
Yeah, there's no return address. Honestly, I mean, when you read the letters, you're not really sure what is the truth and what's not sometimes, because I mean, she would contradict herself in a lot of different things. So I'm not really sure if that's even the truth or not, I mean, honestly, one of the last letters was talking about how I think she wrote it making it sound like she wanted us to feel better about her situation, because I honestly don't think she was studying chemistry or whatever she was saying she was doing if she was in the middle of the bush somewhere, like one of the other letters said. So she contradicted herself a lot in a lot of these things. So we're not really sure what part of what she was saying was the truth and what part wasn't. So that's what's so hard when you're trying to read through some of these things. You're not really sure what you're getting sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Were there ever any leads from anyone? Was there ever anything for you guys to even grasp onto as far as what may have happened?
Never.
Never anything.
There was never any proof that she got her passport, that she went to South Africa. There were no records from the embassies that she arrived there. And so, it did take her about a month to get what she said she needed to be able to go originally. And that was in the letter from New Orleans. And basically, she said she had about 23 months of continuous warm weather between being in Mexico, visiting in the summer in Virginia, and then going to what she always told her family and friends, that she was going back to South Africa to oppose apartheid. We never found any proof that she made it.
She never had a passport that ever said any indication that she ever went to Africa or anything like that.
We did contact a friend of hers named Karen Robertson, who said that she had hung out with her the night before she left, and that Elizabeth had talked to her a lot about South Africa. And Karen was just adamant that that's where she thought she was, that she just spoke in detail, that she never contradicted herself. So she really thought that's where she was. But again, we've never found any proof of anything. And like Tracy said, it's all kind of contradictory.
Why did it take so long for police or for you guys to be able to actually file a police report on her? Why was there never a report filed, or what was so difficult about that process?
Well, that's so strange because, and Dad did do the passport letter as well, and they just came back and said if she did have one, it was an illegal passport because it wasn't in her name. So with the visa too, but we contacted the Salem Police Department, and I couldn't tell you when. It's, after 45 years, it's like in and out. But, the police officer, he came here and kind of listened and wrote some stuff down. So honestly, I thought that he went back and filed a case. I thought we had a case number. And then with the, my brother got in contact with the local police department or FBI or the Department of Justice or whatever it was. And he gave them some of the letters and so forth. So we thought that was a case number, was created there. So, and then the fact that we didn't have a case number, that was just crazy. It was like, how in the world could we be in contact with all these people and there's no case number set up anywhere? So that's when Christy, we called the local FBI and she couldn't find anything listed about Lisbeth. I believe she said she had 70 some missing peoples and she wouldn't be one of them, but since she was missing for so long, to contact the FBI in Richmond.
What did she leave behind? Did she leave any clothing behind? Did she leave any possessions behind? Anything that you guys have of her today?
I have her class ring. Um, and I still have that. And then she had like a little tin box that had like buffalo nickels and things like that in it. Kept everything locked, even her luggage. I do remember that her luggage. Every time she got into it, she unlocked it.
And my mom would tell me that she was very, very secretive about things, like what Christy was just saying about how her suitcase was locked. Even before she left, my mom said that she didn't like to like for people to know where she was going. Like she would go a different way around the block so that people wouldn't know how she was driving. I mean, it sounded odd, but just very secretive, just in general, even before any of this ever came up, which is kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
Very private.
Wow. Yeah, that is very interesting. She had that kind of mind. So as I was going through and like doing research and all of that and reading letter after letter, I read some information that she had checked out some library books. Do you guys know what those books were? What were they about or anything like that? What was she researching or what was she looking into?
Her father said that Elizabeth had checked out some library books on Mexico, and he thought that was odd because Elizabeth said she was going to South Africa.
She, in a couple of those letters, if you've noted, or if I'm sure everybody else has, she did reiterate a couple times, like if anything ever happened to her, we would be notified. And she said it again and again. So, that kind of put us at ease a little bit too. Yeah. Like she's going somewhere and she could be in danger, possibly, hopefully not. But if anything did happen to her, mom and dad would know about it.
What were her dreams and what were her plans as she was going into adulthood? What did she say she wanted to do? Or was she just clueless and trying to figure life out?
She had her sights set on going to Emory and Henry. And we just, as mom and dad just couldn't financially do that. And there wasn't a whole lot of scholarship. She was a bright person, very intelligent. She was listening America's Who's Who and what's the name of that book? Outstanding Students. And anyway, she's listed in that. But I think that kind of really hit her hard when she couldn't go to college because she was very intelligent. And then she did go to community college here locally for a while. And then she had a summer job. And that summer job was solely for the purpose to get money gathered up so she could go to Mexico. That, to me, everybody says that she's, telling some lies, not lies, but being deceitful. She may have been the last year she was here, and we all kind of think that maybe she started planning this trip to Mexico. Maybe there was a connection between a church that she preached at locally. Maybe she met up with someone there and they got into this small group, because it's almost like she planned this trip to Mexico in details. So, and after that, she was very secretive. And during that last year she was with us, she was very secretive. But she, other than that, she wasn't like that all of her life. She wasn't.
So as far as this particular church that she was preaching at, did you guys ever find out where it was and who was involved with it and what happened with that?
We're just now starting on that. I went yesterday over to a church, I believe it was, because I saw it one time 40 some years ago. So I'm going to research that. I took a picture of it and I'm going to call and see if we can get some documentation on that, possibly. She was searching. Mm-hmm. She was searching.
And I think that's why the cult thing looks to be something for us, because she would be the typical person to go after if you were a cult, because she was searching for meaning in her life. She couldn't go to college. Her older two brothers had joined the military, so they were doing their thing. And there she was in Salem, Virginia, trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do with my life? And another thing is that she was really close to my other grandpa, Preston, and he actually died of a massive heart attack right as they graduated from high school, and she was pretty close to him too. So she had a lot of stuff going on within that last year of her life. Like, he passed away. My mom, her best friend, got married to her brother, and they moved to DC. So she kind of not lost her best friend, but her best friend wasn't in town. So she was in DC like 5 hours away. So she was dealing with a lot of different issues right around the same time as she graduated from high school. And I think it kind of maybe sent her into this little bit of like, wow, what am I supposed to do with myself right now, kind of thing.
And someone was able to prey upon that and draw her into, whatever it is they had going on.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm
exactly.
thinking. I don't know if that's what happened, but I think that makes a lot of sense.
How have you guys been searching? How have you guys been researching and trying to find out the details about her, where she may have gone, her life? What have you guys been able to do at this point? I know you've kind of compiled a whole, I guess, dictionary of Elizabeth, right? Of the Bible of Elizabeth, her whole entire existence, so to speak. So who can speak to, I guess, the gathering process and how you guys are trying to search? What are you doing at this point? Aside from my podcast.
What I found most surprising in this process is how difficult it was to get a case opened. Because Elizabeth was from Salem. She was last seen in Roanoke. The last 2 letters were from Yonkers, New York, and she was purportedly out of the country. And so nobody would claim jurisdiction when it came to opening a case. Salem said to call Roanoke. Roanoke said to call Salem. The state police said they didn't have jurisdiction, and the FBI wouldn't respond. And so while there were a lot of missing persons cases and a lot of investigations over the years, we just now got a case number because Christy tried again and got somebody who finally opened a case for Elizabeth. And so that allows us to compare DNA from the family to the CODIS database, which is the FBI database for missing persons. And that will let us know if there's anything, like any match from Jonestown or any Jane Doe that's been found and not identified. And so that's a huge step that we've been waiting for. And then beyond that, it's just getting all of the information that we can out there to see if anybody met her when she was traveling to California or New Orleans or, Mexico. She seemed to be stationed around Monterey. If anybody recognizes maybe the kind of paper that she was using or the postmark from Yonkers, other people cut contact with their families around the same time in the group that she was with. So, if we can connect to another family that maybe got more information than we did, that would help a lot. So that's our goal in getting all this information now. Elizabeth left Salem, Virginia in August of 1971, and she reached Mexico in early October, right about October 1st of 1971, and she very quickly met 2 people who introduced her to a larger group of people. They were from the United States, Mexico, and Canada, and she describes this group as a youth group, and then she says a youth movement. And this was the group that she decided to join after not even 2 months. At the age of 19, after not even being with this group for 2 months, she decided to join them and go to South Africa to work as a missionary. She came back in July of 1972 to visit her family for about 2 weeks. And her father felt that this was to reassure the family after she found out that the FBI were looking for her. And the group that she was with hit the roof after they heard that. And so they were definitely alarmed about, the FBI looking for Elizabeth's whereabouts. And she was there for 2 weeks, and then she was planning on coming back the following year. But she sent a letter in 1973. The letter was written in February 1973 and postmarked in April of 1973. So we believe she might have been out of the country and sent the letter to somebody to redirect from Yonkers, New York. And the last letter came, it was probably written around February of 1974. And it was also postmarked April 20th, 1974 in Yonkers, New York. And both of those letters, the envelopes were written by somebody else. And so we're also looking at having the DNA tested on the stamp and the envelope to find out who may have sealed that letter or put the stamp on. And that was the last letter. And in the last two letters, Elizabeth said in the next to last letter, that she was very happy, in all of her letters, she said she was very happy. She was doing what she loved and that she had planned to visit. And then in the last letter, she apologized for not coming out to visit. And then she still said she wanted to come out to visit. She wanted to help her family, that she owed them and she loved them. And, she didn't know when she would come back out, so she wasn't going to give a time. But in that last letter, she obviously wasn't expecting it to be her last letter.
What do you guys want people to do to help you guys with this search? What would you like to see happen?
I would love to see my sister walk through the front door. But any connection, anyone, because there's got to be she went with a small group of people who had the same desire. She said that they were nurses, engineers, they were intelligent people as well as her, wanting to save the world. There's someone that knows something about my sister. A final goal would for my dad to have some information about my sister. That would be what what we're all striving for. My nieces and nephews, if nothing else, they've grown closer. Elizabeth wasn't anyone they knew, so now they know her as part of our family. It's that's what I want to see come out through this. We've been searching for so long.
If you're able to get a message to her, if by chance she happens to see this, or what would you say to her if she could hear this, if she could see this, or if that was possible?
I would tell her or ask her to please come home. I've missed her for so long, and I love her so much, and we've missed a whole lifetime of memories, and at least we could maybe get some more memories while we can.
What about people who may be withholding information? Because if they're involved in a cult, right, they're going to hold on to that. But any thoughts for people who have information who might be holding on to it?
I honestly, just without any filter, I want to say shame on you. It's not your decision to make. It's something that I think every family is different, and I think this family deserves to know what happened to her.
What was the last activity on her Social Security card, on her bank account, things like that? What was the last anything of her?
I know he wrote to Social Security, and I don't know if they gave the last date of anything. They just said there hadn't been any activity. I'll go back and I'd have to look at that response from them. I'm not aware as far as the bank. That back in that time, I was 16, so my dad might know that, and we can certainly ask him. But as far as the bank activity, I really don't know. When she went to Mexico, I think she closed out. She was saving, of course, so I think she closed out her saving account to go to Mexico.
I'd be very curious to see, has a Social Security number ever been used over the course of years? You know what I mean? Like if someone got a hold to it at some point in time or whatever, you know what I mean? You just never know.
They would never give us any information. And because we didn't have an open case number.
Yeah, so she's still alive. I mean, according to, based on the records and things like that. So is there anything else that you guys think that we didn't cover or that we didn't discuss about this case that you want people to know?
She was my sister, and we slept in bunk beds, and we shared life together, and she was such a good person. There's nothing wrong with her. It's like my dad wrote in that one letter to Grandma. It's like she was so easy. You didn't have to tell her to do anything. She was honestly like a perfect child, and she had a fantastic heart, and her only problem was that I think she was too smart for her own good. I don't know. Or she was searching for something we couldn't give her in Salem, Virginia.
So what do you guys think about, the social media activity and things like that at this point, with the case and just people kind of digging into their own theories and things like that?
This is what's so amazing about having Facebook and Twitter and all these other things right now. We're able to get the story out to other people and have other people give their input. And I mean, there's groups out here that have been contacting us, like Web Sleuths and all these other websites and organizations and people who like to dig into these things and investigate things I've never even heard of before. So it's been pretty amazing seeing people we have never met, had any contact with, show so much interest and desire to help us find an answer. And that to me has been amazing.
If there are other families out there, like if she was involved in the Children of God or one of those cults, if there are other families out there who had, a child go missing during that time or has been missing for years and years, if they were to see this story and say, hey, this happened to me, maybe, that connecting our family to another family can help to provide clues and possibly lead us somewhere in the investigation, maybe to finding out what happened, where they are, if they're still out there.
If she's no longer with us, she may have some children that we would love to put our arms around and get to know them.
When it comes to my final thoughts about this case, the first thing that comes to mind is, what's the name of the group that Elizabeth left with, and where did she really go? We know that she spent some time in Mexico, but was her idea of going to South Africa a reality? The family did say they discovered that she had an illegal passport, but did she really get to use it? Another thought is, was she one of the hundreds of people who died in Jonestown? The family is checking. They put their DNA into CODIS, NamUs, and other databases, and they're hoping to get some results in the next month. I'll keep an eye on that. The family is also digging into the possibility that she may have joined the Children of God cult. And who is the mystery person who picked up Elizabeth's car from her aunt's house 2 days after she left town? Something to think about. Another interesting detail is the family is planning to have the 2 final letters they got from Elizabeth tested for DNA to find out exactly who sent them. And lastly, did she ever have children? There's so much to absorb and to think about with this case, and hopefully the family will get some degree of closure, especially for Elizabeth's father, who's 94 years old. Elizabeth would be 67 years old today. She has a large freckle on her nose and a bent pinky finger on her right hand. She was 5'4" and 115 pounds at the time of her disappearance. If you have any information in this case, call Virginia State Police at 540-375-9568. If there's a case that you want me to check out, just visit me on my Facebook page or via email at intriguedfulleffect@hotmail.com. Until next time, be safe and stay true. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Intrigued, Full Effect, Curious Cases, Disappearances, and Other Stuff podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the host. The primary purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. The host of this podcast assumes no liability or responsibility for any activities in connection with opinions shared in the podcast. The podcast and blog associated with it shall not be used in any legal capacity or as a basis for expert testimony. Any copyright material in the podcast is approved by the owner or is part of the public domain. Music by Pond 5.